She had never felt fear before. Princess Zarana of the Valari Dominion had been raised in palaces of sapphire and fireglass, bred to speak 9 languages before age 5, and trained to command entire planetary fleets. Fear was a thing of lesser beings. But as her escape pod screamed through the atmosphere of an unregistered planet, engines failing, alarms shrieking, fear found her. She hadn't seen it coming. One moment, she stood aboard the Imperial Envoy vessel, attending what was supposed to be a diplomatic ceremony between Valari high houses. The next, her own kin turned on her, her uncle's voice cold as vacuum, asterisk. For the future of the Dominion, your blood must end here. Asterisk. The guards didn't hesitate. Their loyalty to the royal line evaporated in a single breath. They drew weapons. Her AI tried to activate the emergency protocols, but the override was already in place. In the chaos, she made it to an escape pod, barely. Her crown shattered as the hatch sealed. Then came the fall. Her pod tore through dense atmosphere, shaking so violently her bones felt like glass. Through the viewport, she saw nothing but a blur of green and blue. No power signatures. No satellites. No welcoming fleet. Just wilderness. Impact came like death. The pod slammed into earth, metal twisting and shrieking. Her restraints snapped her forward. Something in her side cracked. Then blackness. When she woke, the air was thick with moisture. The pod was half submerged in mud, cracked open like a shell. Rain soaked her uniform, which had torn along her arm. Her side throbbed with every breath. Her AI stuttered, its voice flickering. Critical damage, no link to Dominion net, location unknown. Primitive biosphere detected. She crawled out, each movement sharp with pain. The forest around her was alien. Enormous trees. Damp air filled with unfamiliar scents, decay, growth, life without order. Her kind built planets. This one had grown wild. Her first instinct was to call for extraction, but the locator was dead. The AI offered no help. It had sustained heavy memory loss and couldn't even provide directional mapping. She had no tools, no comms, no connection to her fleet. For the first time in her life, she was alone. Zarana stumbled forward, each step an insult to her royal training. Leaves clung to her skin. Insects buzzed at the edges of her hearing. Her lungs fought the dense air. She fell, scrambled up, fell again. Her pride screamed louder than her injuries. After an hour, maybe 2, she collapsed. Lying in cold mud, her breathing ragged, she felt the enormity of her situation. She was no longer a princess. No longer an heir. She was nothing but wounded prey on a backwater planet no one had thought worth cataloging. She thought of her mother, who once told her, asterisk. Power means no one can touch you unless you allow it. Asterisk, those words now mocked her. No one would come. Her power was gone. Her people had cast her aside like a failed genetic experiment. The Dominion didn't want her rescued. They wanted her erased. Tears mixed with dirt as the cold set in. She curled into herself, trembling not from pain, but from a truth she could no longer deny. She had been abandoned. And the universe, once full of voices that bowed before her, now answered with only silence. The man heard the crash before he saw it. It wasn't thunder, he knew the difference. This was something heavier, deeper. A boom that rolled through the valley and rattled the tools on his cabin wall. He stepped outside, rifle slung over one shoulder, and watched smoke rise over the tree line. Most would have turned back. He went forward. The forest was thick, paths unmarked. His boots moved through brush and bramble without hesitation. He tracked animals for a living, not for sport but survival. They called him Dog, in town, loyal, solitary, sharp. He didn't correct them. By the time he reached the crater, the smoke was thin and the heat had faded. A strange pod had embedded itself into the earth like a bullet in flesh. Silver, blackened by impact, with markings no human made. No windows. No seams. He approached slowly, eyes scanning for danger. A corner had split open, leaking steam and blue light. Something shifted inside. Then she fell out. She wasn't human. Slender, taller than average, her skin tinted a pale violet with streaks of silver across her cheeks. Her clothing was shredded, soaked in blood and dirt. An open gash ran down her side, and her breathing was shallow. She looked up at him, eyes wide, bright, almost glowing. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Her body tensed, ready to flee but too broken to move. He dropped to one knee, rifle across his back. His voice was low, steady. "I'm not gonna hurt you." She didn't understand the words, but the tone mattered. She flinched when he reached for her, then passed out cold. He worked fast. Wrapped her side with gauze from his kit. Crude but clean. Slung her over his shoulders, careful not to jostle the wound. She was light, lighter than her size should allow. The hike back was brutal. He took the long path, away from roads or neighbors. No need to explain this. At his cabin, he laid her on his cot. Pulled off her ruined boots, wiped blood from her neck, stitched what he could. Her skin resisted the needle strangely, but he forced it through. She didn't stir. When she finally opened her eyes, it was dark. The fireplace crackled. She jolted, tried to sit up, but her body betrayed her. He raised a hand. "Easy," he said. "You're safe." She stared at him, intensely, silently. Her eyes flicked from the fire to his hands to the walls lined with books, wires, tools, cans. Primitive, but orderly. Her voice was a whisper, foreign and melodic, full of command. He didn't answer. Just handed her water. She sniffed it first, then drank. Later, her AI flickered to life. It scanned him from the floor beside the bed, its voice faint and mechanical. Subject human. Male. Technology pre-quantum. Emotional state neutral. Intelligence adaptable. Threat level undetermined. She tried to communicate with it, but most systems were down. She asked for coordinates. Nothing. The AI could only confirm they were on a planet called Earth, designated Class D, unaligned, low-tech, and outside Dominion reach. She looked at him again. The human. He was boiling rice, scraping canned meat into a pan. Humming under his breath. Not once did he question who or what she was. Not once did he ask her to leave. He just kept feeding her, dressing her wounds, checking her temperature. When she tried to speak again, he answered with gestures. Pointed to objects. Named them. Fire. Food. Water. Safe. It frustrated her, but also intrigued her. The people in her world wouldn't have touched her without clearance. This man didn't even flinch at her alien skin. He didn't treat her like a weapon, a leader, or a threat. Just another person who needed help. She watched him build a splint from scrap wood and tape. Watched him fix a broken radio, muttering as he soldered wires. None of it advanced. But every move had purpose. Her AI spoke again. Unstructured learning patterns detected. High adaptability. Social behavior non-hostile. She didn't know his name. Didn't know if he even understood the danger he'd invited into his home. But she knew this. She was alive because of him. Not her training. Not her lineage. Him. And that realization unsettled her more than the crash. She sat near the fire, legs wrapped in a rough blanket, eyes fixed on the man moving with calm precision around his cabin. His actions were predictable yet efficient. He cleaned tools, adjusted wires, checked a hand-cranked radio, and stirred a pot without pause. Every gesture was purposeful, every decision grounded in immediate need. It lacked elegance but not intelligence. Days passed. Her body healed faster than he expected, but slower than she wanted. Her ribs still ached, and the wound on her side, while sealed, throbbed when she moved. He fashioned her a walking stick out of a branch and handed it to her without ceremony. She had studied thousands of species. This one, Homo sapiens Earth native, pre-warp, low-gravity colonization potential, was marked minimal strategic value in Dominion archives. Yet the man showed something beyond survival instinct. He didn't ask questions. He didn't pry. He simply offered food, shelter, and the space to breathe. Her AI regained partial function. Its voice was quiet but steady now, filtering data from the environment. Local temperature variation within manageable limits. Primitive but stable dwelling. Host's cognitive patterns indicate reactive learning. Probability of violent behavior, low. Probability of emotional bonding, rising. She ignored the last line. Communication was still slow. They built a system from gestures and objects. He pointed to firewood. She carried it. He mimed thirst. She handed him a cup. He tapped his chest once and said, "Dog." At first, she thought he was referring to the animal, canine, loyal, earth native. Then she realized it was his name, or what others called him. She didn't understand why someone would take the name of a subordinate creature, but it fit. Not in stature, he moved like a hunter, but in behavior. Protective. Alert. Loyal without question. In return, she tapped her own chest and said, "Zarana." He repeated it clumsily. "Zira-na?" "Close enough." She showed him a shard of her ruined locator beacon. He examined it, nodding slowly, running his fingers along the cracked edge. She didn't expect much. It was Dominion tech, quantum-layered, useless without a proper power core. But he didn't give up. He dismantled an old car battery, stripped wires, scavenged components from an ancient radio, and used a soldering iron with a cracked handle to fuse it all together. It looked ridiculous. It shouldn't have worked. Then the shard glowed faintly. Her AI reactivated a new subroutine. Signal recognition partial. Local boost insufficient for interstellar range. Recommend power amplification. She blinked. The man had made progress in days what Dominion scientists wouldn't have attempted without clearance. No manuals. No instructions. Just instinct, experience, and sheer stubbornness. Later, she found herself watching him longer than she should have. How he cleaned a blade with precision. How he rewired an antenna while chewing dried meat. How he paused only when she coughed, his eyes flicking to her with concern, but never panic. Her people valued efficiency. The Dominion demanded perfection. This man had neither. But he possessed something they didn't teach: resilience shaped by hardship. Creativity born from necessity. He solved problems not by protocol, but by refusal to quit. She once tried to command him, slipping into her native tongue's authoritative cadence, motioning toward the horizon and demanding to be taken to a populated zone. He only raised an eyebrow, leaned back in his chair, and said, "You're not going anywhere till that side heals." That was the end of that. She didn't try again. Her AI updated its profile. Subject exhibits dominant protector tendencies. No demand for status, compensation, or submission. Behavioral anomaly. She knew what it meant. In the Dominion, assistance always had a price. Political favor. Genetic exchange. Power. This man wanted none of it. She offered him a fragment of metal etched with her family crest, a mark of alliance, a symbol that could be worth entire worlds in the right circles. He looked at it, turned it over, handed it back. "No need," he said simply. She didn't know what to do with that. That night, as the fire burned low and wind rattled the roof, she sat in silence while he snored lightly in the other room. She held the beacon shard close, watching its faint pulse. She had come from the stars, heir to a system-spanning dynasty. And yet here she was, alive and warm in a cabin built by hands that had never touched a starship. Her empire had turned its back on her. But this man hadn't. Weeks passed, and the forest changed with the season. The air grew sharper, trees shedding their leaves in slow surrender. Inside the cabin, routine solidified. He hunted. She learned. He cooked. She repaired. The silence between them had shifted from unfamiliar to comfortable. Zarana adapted fast. Dominion education was absolute: biology, engineering, tactical theory. But nothing prepared her for building traps with wire, stitching torn clothing by hand, or purifying river water using charcoal and cloth. These skills were beneath her rank once. Now they were survival. She taught him, too. Quietly, efficiently. Without ever explaining the full scope of what she knew. She improved the beacon circuit, layered his signal amplifier to boost range, and modified the solar cells from his radio to charge at a higher frequency. He noticed, said nothing. Just nodded in appreciation, eyes sharper than most humans she'd encountered. Her AI grew more vocal. Cognitive interaction nearing full integration. Human subject adapting to non-terrestrial logic. Emotional indicators, steady trust formation. Risk of entanglement, increasing. She muted it. One morning, he brought back an injured animal, a large bird with a broken wing. She expected him to finish it. Instead, he set it down gently, wrapped its wing in cloth, and fed it scraps. It struggled. He persisted. Days later, it stood on its own. It wasn't just compassion. It was pattern. He didn't discard the broken. He tried to fix what others wouldn't bother saving. Later, while repairing a cracked panel from the beacon housing, she asked the AI a simple question. What are the odds the Dominion is still searching for me? The reply came with brutal efficiency. 0.02%. Status presumed dead. No active retrieval signals detected. Political value terminated. She stared at the screen for a long time. He saw her reaction but didn't press. Instead, he handed her a mug of something hot and said, Still here. No sympathy. Just presence. One evening, they worked together on the beacon antenna, fingers close but not touching, heat from the fire warming their arms. She adjusted the frequency. Static filled the room. No signal returned. She leaned back, exhaled slowly, frustration thick in her breath. He didn't offer comfort. He never did. He just kept working, realigning the metal rod, fine-tuning the angle, steady as ever. She realized he wasn't waiting for her to collapse or confess. He had no agenda. No expectation. He helped because it was in his nature. That made him dangerous. Not in the way Dominion taught. He didn't pose a threat to systems or fleets. But he disrupted the certainty she'd been raised on. In her world, people were tools, weapons, assets. Every relationship was a transaction. Yet nothing about him followed that code. And the longer she stayed, the more that logic unraveled. She caught herself studying him when he wasn't looking, how he patched his boots, how he whistled tunelessly while chopping wood, how his face softened slightly when the fire crackled just right. There was no command in him, no hierarchy. Just quiet steadiness. The bird he saved flew off one morning. She watched it vanish over the trees. He simply nodded and returned to his work. She asked him, haltingly, what he'd do if someone came for her. He didn't flinch. Ask if they're friendly? If not, I'd find cover, load the rifle, and shoot first. Simple. Direct. Lethal. He didn't ask who might come. Didn't demand truth. Just stated fact. That night, as rain pattered the roof, she ran diagnostics on the beacon. They were close. A few more modifications and it might send a burst strong enough to reach a Dominion probe, if one ever passed close. But something in her hesitated. Escape was what she'd wanted. Survival, then rescue. Return to the order she'd known. Now, the idea felt distant. Fragile. Her AI flickered again. Subject emotionally stabilized. Environment secure. Probability of voluntary return unknown. She lay awake long after he'd fallen asleep, staring at the ceiling, one hand resting on the crest still hidden in her satchel. She wasn't just alive. She was changing. The beacon worked. Not perfectly, but well enough. On the third test run, it emitted a stable pulse, short range, encrypted, powerful enough to catch a passing scout vessel if one crossed the system. Dominion frequency, unmistakable. Her AI confirmed it. Signal strength, 61%. Range, sublight detection possible. Awaiting acknowledgement. She sat back, hands resting on her knees, pulse steady despite what this meant. For weeks, this had been the goal: repair, signal, get out, return to her place, her people, her purpose. But now, with success in hand, clarity didn't come. He didn't ask if she was leaving. Didn't congratulate her. Just checked the wiring, adjusted the cabin's roof patch, and went about his day like nothing had changed. She watched him carefully. His expression didn't shift, but she knew he understood. He wasn't dense, just quiet, thoughtful, and unwilling to assume. That night, a storm came. Rain hammered the roof, wind howled through the trees, and the fire threatened to die. He reinforced the window seals. She secured the antenna. Together, they moved through the motions, each knowing it could be the last time. By morning, the storm passed. The air smelled of wet soil and pine. A soft hum came from the beacon's relay. A reply. The AI confirmed it first. Encoded transmission received. Signal origin, Dominion scout vessel. Identification confirmed. Estimated arrival, 41 hours. Stand by for location ping. She stood frozen. Not from fear, but the weight of decision. Rescue meant restoration, power, safety, rank. A return to the empire she was bred to serve. The same empire that tried to erase her. He sat by the fire, brewing coffee. She approached slowly, unsure how to start. He didn't look up. I got a ping, she said quietly. He nodded. Figured. They'll come for me. I know. She waited for the question. It never came. I don't know what happens after, she admitted. Still no pressure. No plea. Just silence. She sat beside him, staring at the rising smoke. In Dominion protocol, contact with pre-FDL species is restricted. You shouldn't even know I exist. Too late for that, he said simply. She smirked barely. You'll be flagged. Interrogated. Maybe worse. He shrugged. Then they'll try. She studied his profile, calm, steady, unmoved by threat. He wasn't afraid, not of her world or its reach. He'd already made peace with whatever came. I could erase the logs, she offered. Scrub the beacon's memory. You'd be invisible. Then do it. Just like that? You're the one with the choice, not me. The AI interrupted. Vessel closing. Estimated contact, 34 hours. Cloaked. No additional transmissions. She stood and walked to the device. The controls blinked in waiting silence. One button would erase it all: pulse logs, coordinates, identity records. Another would finalize the rendezvous. He said nothing. She didn't turn. Instead, she asked, Why did you help me? He looked up finally. You needed it. No one else would have. I'm not everyone else. That was it. No grand speeches. No emotion. Just truth. She pressed a sequence on the beacon. The screen dimmed. Data wiped. Signal ended. Power down complete. She returned to him slowly. They'll miss the mark. Assume debris scatter. Move on. You sure? No, she said. But I've never been more done with certainty. He didn't smile. Didn't nod. Just poured her a cup and handed it over. The crest stayed buried in her pack. The uniform would never be worn again. Her bloodline meant nothing here. She wasn't royalty. Wasn't an heir. She was just Serana. And he was just dog. The AI chimed one last time. Final log entry. Dominion contact terminated by user command. Subject status, unknown entity. No external classification. She sipped the drink in silence. Smoke curled between them. Outside, the world turned without ceremony. Inside, they remained. Two survivors in a quiet cabin at the edge of a forgotten planet. And neither of them was alone anymore.